Welcome back to the program. So we're going to have two quick little segments today. First thing I want to start with is Iran. So President Trump has now announced that there's going to be another ceasefire. Okay. Now, I understand what he's doing here. Okay. I truly understand what he's doing. But before I get into that, let me read you what he said. Based on the fact that the government of Iran is seriously fractured, not unexpectedly so, and upon the request of Field Marshal Asim Munir and Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif of Pakistan, we have been asked to hold our attack on the country of Iran until such time as their leaders and representatives can come up with a unified proposal. I have therefore directed our military to continue the blockade and in all other respects remain ready and able, and will therefore extend the ceasefire until such time as their proposal is submitted and discussions are concluded, one way or the other. President Donald Trump. So it's interesting right off the bat that it did not have a time frame, right? You would expect the first one was 2 weeks, right? You would expect if he's going to do it again and he wants to get them to the negotiating table, maybe he would have said, you've got 72 hours, right? Enough time to travel to Pakistan, right? For our delegation, their delegation, they meet up, they negotiate, see what happens, one last try. He didn't do that. This is the art of the ceasefire, in my opinion. Let me explain. So the first ceasefire, which again, I would never have done, but whatever, he did it, was basically to give our military time to recoup, of course, collect themselves, get more equipment in, get more men, personnel, manpower, artillery, ships, whatever we need into the area for the final showdown, basically, right? And it was for them to basically be stalled and think that they have one over on us. But this is President Trump. This is not any other president. This is President Trump. So here's what I think is happening. If you look at the news reports out of Iran, the blockade is still on. So that means what? To them, a declaration of war. So at this point, they're not interested in talking. Do you follow what's happening here? And the Iranians said that they are planning on a retaliatory attack. And there it is. He's goading them. He is making them attack us so that he can break the ceasefire and wipe them out. At least that's what I think. Just kind of putting things together. Why there's no date of 3 days or 4 days or 5 days or 24 hours or 48 hours or whatever it might be. There's no final timeline. You would assume if there was, it would be for traveling and things like that, and they were serious about negotiations. But he's not serious about negotiations, and neither are they. So this was a way, in my opinion, for President Trump to basically goad them into kinetic action, into warfare, so that the ceasefire is broken. You've got laser technology coming into the area. You've got the USS Bush, I think, is coming back in. It might even be there already, or it'll be there tomorrow. This is what's happening, in my opinion. He wants them to break this ceasefire. He wants them to show non-compliance so that he can then take the next step. At least that's what I think. And who knows? I could be wrong. But I think that's what's happening here. Okay? Now let's move on to something even more important. Something horrific happened tonight, and that was, of course, the Virginia redistricting, which basically means what? That if it's allowed to stand, which I'm not so sure that it will, and I'll explain why in a minute, that would be 5 extra seats minimum. Minimum. It could be as many as 8 or 9 because of what they did. They went from a 6-5 map Democrat 6, Republican 5, to probably an 8-2 or a 9-1 map for Democrats. Okay? Now, I'm going to give you some reasons why, in the end, I don't think this is going to stand. I know a lot of you are probably going, holy cow, Josh, I can't believe it. We did, look what they did. They're killing us. They're stealing the midterm. I get it. That's why I'm Dr. Bernstein as well. I'm here to explain, break it down, analyze, all that good stuff. So, first thing I want to do is I want to play you all a little video here. This is a video from, I don't know, something in Virginia's news or whatever. But this is them talking about before the vote happened and what would happen if it passed. And by the way, it was 51-48. And I believe the Department of Justice is going to be filing a lawsuit just like they do with California. So don't worry about that. But anyway, listen to what they say.
We wait to see what voters decide. There are still several legal concerns about what happens next.
Yeah,
Several legal concerns
are pending as Republicans argue the referendum isn't just wrong, it's unconstitutional. Emily Harrison has what could come next if voters say yes.
Virginia's Supreme Court could still have the final say, as the state's justices never made a ruling on the special election's legality.
Authorized to modify one or more congressional districts. They never... Here, I'll rewind that because this is an important part.
Legality.
Right.
Earlier this year, Republicans made a ruling on the special election's legality. Earlier this year, Republican-led groups filed 3 separate lawsuits against the redistricting efforts, citing multiple issues from language on the ballot to claims it violated the state's constitution.
It's frustrating. It's un-American. It's not Virginian.
But the state Supreme Court ruled the election could move forward and the legality would be determined later, saying, quote, issuing an injunction to keep Virginians from the polls is not the proper way to make this decision.
Yes, it is, because if it was illegal and unconstitutional, which of course it is, why would you allow them to vote on something illegal and unconstitutional in the first place, Virginia Supreme Court?
Political analyst Leslie Coggle says it's possible the Supreme Court could revisit these arguments, but it places the justices in a difficult situation.
You can only imagine how voters would feel or perceive the legitimacy of the court, or maybe the partisanship of the court, if voters vote yes on this and then the court subsequently throws it out. I think it's a really hard thing for the court to do.
No, it isn't. Not if it's unconstitutional and illegal. Voters will get over it.
Says there's also precedent to keep in mind. The Supreme Courts of Texas and California both approved redistricting efforts in the middle of an election cycle. And even if Virginia Supreme Court takes up the lawsuits, the justices could not deliberate for long, as early voting for primary elections is only weeks away.
And unless tomorrow the Supreme Court hands down their opinion, there is going to be this space in which there's still uncertainty regardless of the electoral outcome.
Emily Harrison, 13 News Net.
So these scumbag Democrat communist pieces of shit decided to do this vote and put it as far out as they possibly could. Why? Because if they were able to steal it, let's face it, I'm sure this was stolen. If they were able to steal it and get this vote done, they knew that in time, the legal ramifications and all that were not going to be able to be settled before the primary. So what does this mean? It's very simple. It means that the only way this can be stopped before the midterms is if our Department of Justice steps in and files a lawsuit. Now, I don't know if they're planning on doing that yet, but looking into this, there's a couple of things here. The Department of Justice can sue to stop redistricting efforts if it violates federal law. While states retain primary authority over redrawing of their legislative and congressional districts, the Department of Justice possesses the legal authority to intervene under specific federal frameworks. Now, what else is happening? Well, the Supreme Court is looking at two major decisions, one, of course, being birthright citizenship. But what's the other one? The other one is what? The 1965 Voting Rights Act, and in particular, Section 2. So here's the thing. What happens if the Supreme Court has their decision, they do the right thing, and they repeal Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, and they do it before the midterms? Now, a couple things with that. We're hearing a lot of this information going around with Molly Hemingway. She's a political pundit and now a new author of a book called Alito. And she's talking about, and she has revealed, that basically the Democrats on the Supreme Court put the conservative justices and their lives in danger during the Dobbs decision, right? We remember the leak that came out, and we'll find the leaker, right? Well, that decision came out, and we saw what happened. Death threats to the Supreme Court justices, showing up at their house, people got arrested, all this crazy stuff, right? They look like demons trying to beat down the door and everything else. And so what happened, though? Dobbs was overturned, or, Roe v. Wade, which was the Dobbs decision, was overturned. What did I report to you about, less than a week ago? Remember Sean Spicer came out and said that they're, quote, slow walking the decision on the Voting Rights Act, Section 2. One of the things that the Supreme Court has been doing because of so much gridlock is they've been doing what's called shadow docket. And the shadow docket is basically them creating and making a decision, whether it's good or bad or indifferent, and then holding on to it. And then when they release it, a lot of times they're just dropping a decision. They're not even doing their due diligence of explaining why they are, in the majority opinion or why they're in the majority dissent, whatever it is. A lot of that's not even happening. And what these scumbags on the court, the liberals on the court, the communists on the court are doing is when they get a bad decision, they are keeping that decision from going out to the public until it's politically expedient to do so. So if Sean Spicer is correct and that the decision to repeal Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act has already been done, they're holding on to that decision. Now, again, on the Full Throttle Thursday, I was miffed. I was like, why are they doing that? Well, now I understand why they're doing that. Because they don't want Republicans to redistrict if the decision came out now. So they're going to wait, because they're assholes, to the very last minute, which is what? The end of June, which is what they do every single year. Anytime there's controversial decisions, good, bad, or indifferent, they drop them at the end of their term. And that's usually in June, and then they disappear until October, right? That's what the Supreme Court does. So assuming Sean Spicer is correct, and my God, please, I hope he is, these redistricting efforts in California, in Virginia, the one they stole up in Utah, they're all going to be nullified. Why? Because Section 2 is gone, and that means no more gerrymandering. So I wouldn't lose a ton of sleep over this just yet. I'm trying to give you the positive aspect that no one else is talking about. That's what I do. Am I 100% accurate and right on this? I don't know. But I have a good feeling that there's going to be a lot of challenges. How they did this, the wording, the trickery that they used. Remember, they tried the same thing in Kansas a couple of years ago with really crazy, confusing language, and eventually a judge stepped in. So again, this could be a similar situation. And if the Department of Justice enjoins and sues to stop it, like they're already doing right now in California, hold your horses, okay? Hold your horses is what I would say on this one. Now, the other thing that I wanted to cover just briefly in this is the SPLC, the Southern Poverty Law Center. These are the biggest communists out there, other than maybe, I don't know, Act Blue and so many others, and the Soroses and things like that. The Southern Poverty Law Center are terrorists, okay? They came after me so hard. I'll never forget. I did a speech one time where I was the moderator for different Senate candidates in Arizona, and they called it the March for the Right and all this other crazy stuff. And we had armed security. We had military personnel there with AKs and all that. I mean, watching and keeping things, copacetic. And I'll never forget, they put, and you probably remember it, they put an image of me in the middle as the moderator with Sheriff Joe and Kelly Ward at the time, and I can't remember who else. There was a couple of others, and they put me right in the middle, and they called me like the far-right ringleader of the March for the Right, thing or whatever in Glendale or Phoenix. I don't remember where it was. This is like 2017, long time ago. So they've been coming after my ass for years, is what I'm trying to say. And now to see that we are now coming after their ass, I'm loving it. All the people that attacked me all these years, the Ilhans and everyone else, now they're all under investigation because you know what? I've always been right. I've always been on the right side of the law, number one. And number two, I've always been brave enough to expose the corruption and the crazy stuff that has been going on for the last decade plus, 14 years and counting that I've been doing this. And I'm not going to stop. And I'm going to be over the target every single time. Those are my thoughts. What are yours? Put them down in the comments below. We'll see you in the next one.